So where's your degree from? Degrees, UT, all of them UT Austin. I'm always fascinated by how people's careers take. Well, I figured one life, one career. I grew up with this.
Well, hello, everyone. This is Scott Roberts from Explore Scientific and the Explore Alliance, and we're at day 2 of the 2024 Astronomical League Convention in Overland Park, Kansas. With Kent Martz today is Mr. Wren, who was director at McDonald Observatory for something like 32 years. And so he has recently retired, and he's with us today and is about to give a lecture there. And so, Kent, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Scott. I hope you're having a great day. Hi, everybody. Kent Martz with Explore Scientific. We're here in Overland Park, Kansas, which is Kansas City, Kansas metro area for the Astronomical League Convention, and having a great time. Bill just got done giving a speech on the history of McDonald Observatory, where he worked for 32 years. And I asked him, what'd you do before? Were you in astronomy before? Astrophysics degree. And turns out Bill has a fascinating story about how he got a career in astronomy. So, Bill?
Well, sure. First off, I have to thank your friend there for the promotion. I was not the director of McDonald Observatory. I was special assistant to the superintendent at McDonald.
Oh, okay. All right.
Which is really a much better job to have than being. But yes, I actually, my formal training, my formal academic training is as a counselor. I was a licensed professional counselor in Austin, Texas for many years back in the 70s and 80s. Helped open and run a runaway shelter for at-risk youth, and was the director of a family crisis center. And to keep my sanity in my spare time for fun, I would, and a little spare change, I was an academic tutor for undergraduate students in astronomy at the University of Texas. And I would periodically hear the name of Dr. Bash. Frank Bash was a professor, a teacher of astronomy at the University of Texas that particularly enthusiastic students just seemed to love. Many years went by, and I finally decided I needed to meet the man. So I went down and introduced myself, and Frank Bash invited me to audit some of his courses and graduate seminars in astronomy, and did that for about a year and a half. And he pulled me aside after class one day and said, "There's a position out at McDonald Observatory that's open. I think you'd be perfect for." And 30 days later, I pulled the plug on my counseling career and went to work and live and work at McDonald Observatory. I did stay active in counseling for many years with the local crisis center there. But astronomy became my full-time job.
And so you lived on the mountain.
I did.
What was that like? I mean, you're living where in an environment that every astronomer wishes they lived in. Now,
Yeah.
granted, it's like working in a chocolate factory. You may not want chocolate pie for dessert every day, but it was still pretty cool, right?
It was totally cool living on the mountain. We were in university housing. My wife and I shared a luxurious 500 square foot house, and the view was to die for. We were perched on the south edge of the mountain, and I could see 100 miles from where we were sitting, all the way down to Presidio, Texas, and Ojinaga, Mexico. And the stars at night were particularly impressive. Come home from work or go out, just walk out onto the deck at night and look up, and the stars they're there for you to reach out and touch. It's absolutely spectacular.
Having been there for a night back in 2008, I can tell you it's hard to explain. Even having been to dark sky sites, this is elevated above that. So For the people who don't know what McDonald Observatory is, give us the 200-word explanation. He
200 words.
just gave a 45-minute
Yeah.
talk on the history.
Insane.
So
Yeah, and I rushed through that one,
Yeah.
left a lot out, but no, McDonald Observatory, well, it had first off, nothing to do with McDonald's burgers or Ronald McDonald or anything like that. The McDonald Observatory came about when a Paris, Texas banker named William Johnson McDonald passed away in 1926 and surprised everybody, his family included, by leaving his estate about $1 million in those days to the University of Texas at Austin to build an astronomical observatory for the study and the promotion of the study of astronomical science.
did he live at Fort Davis or
No,
didn't
he'd
own
never
land
been-
there or
Never
anything?
been there. He had fought briefly for the Confederacy during the Civil War. He went back to Paris, Texas, northeast Texas, up by the Red River, and well, he bought some land in a speculative deal, made some money, opened a bank, opened several banks, became a lawyer. He was probably the most well-educated man in the state of Texas at the time. He self-taught and had a keen interest in astronomy. And again, no one was more surprised than the people at the University of Texas because they didn't even have an astronomy program, no degree program. I don't think anyone was teaching astronomy at the University of Texas in 1926. It had been taught. There was one astronomer on staff at the university, and that happened to be the president of the university, a man named Benedict.
So when you get $1 million, you start teaching astronomy.
Yeah, they put it in the bank is what they did because they really didn't have the brain power to know what to do with it. So they partnered with the University of Chicago, which at the time and still today has one of the premier academic programs in astronomy.
And ran Yerkes Observatory up just recently.
And they sent astronomers down to Austin and got the academic program going at the University of Texas and got the telescope designed and built at McDonald Observatory, an 82-inch reflector, which was at the time the second largest in the world, second only to the 100-inch reflector on Mount Wilson. In 1939, Mount Wilson was already suffering the effects of light pollution from the Los Angeles basin. So the skies at the McDonald Observatory out in West Texas were much darker, and so the telescope was effectively more powerful than the 100-inch reflector on Mount Wilson.
Why Fort Davis?
Fort Davis, well, I mean, it's not in Fort Davis, it's about 15 miles up the hill from Fort Davis. The mountain, well, the mountain is a very good location. Mount Locke, as it came to be known, was renamed by the state of Texas when Violet Locke McIver donated the land. That helped them make up their mind really quick where they might put the observatory. But it was a very remote location, and the skies are still incredibly dark.
But there's a problem.
The oil and gas industry in the Permian Basin has lit up our sky to the north. It's down low on the horizon. The skies overhead are still very dark.
Blocked by a mountain.
But yes, it's blocked by a mountain. But I mean, the light, if you look to the north, the mountains used to be silhouetted against the dark starry sky. Now they are silhouetted against the glow from the Permian Basin, but it is down low on the horizon. So it's not the end of the world, but thankfully, the oil and gas industry has been very helpful in working to keep their lights on the ground, on their work, and out of the sky.
Now, they didn't do it of their own accord, that it took educational effort.
It took years and years of demonstration projects to convince them that dark sky friendly lighting, night sky friendly lighting was in their interest as well as ours. So their workers could actually see better when light fixtures were aimed down to the ground instead of shining into the sky.
So they didn't change the fixtures. They just took the fixtures that were in place. They had hinge bolts, loosened the bolts, did that, tightened them back up. And the effect on the workers was what?
Well, they rejoiced. The glare is out of my eyes. I can actually see where I'm going now. They could they could see the rattlesnake before they stepped on it. It is remarkable when someone actually sees night sky friendly lighting in operation with their own eyes. And that's typically what it takes. The common wisdom is the brighter the light, the better I see, the safer I am. But what if that bright light is shining right in your eyes, like headlights on the highway? It makes it difficult to see. So by shielding lights and aiming them down to the ground, you have more light where you need it and less light wasted into the night sky, better visibility.
Because when your lights, a good light, I've got actually a picture of a good light in Bentonville, Northwest Arkansas. And I have a picture of it, and I convince everybody it's a bad light because all the lights going up. And then I literally turn the picture on its side.
Yeah.
And it's a perfectly designed
Right.
fixture. It's just turned up literally 90 degrees.
Yeah.
And I often wanted to get a ladder tall enough to just go loosen it, turn it like this.
Yeah.
No one would notice.
Yeah.
If I
Yeah.
got away with it, no one
Yeah.
would notice
They might see the improvement.
and wonder what the heck happened.
Yeah.
And it's simply a matter of turning the light down so it's all shine on the ground.
Yeah.
You didn't deal with color. You didn't.
We did.
Have you dealt with color?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. I mean, but initially though, you're right. We worked with the industry that already had installations in place with floodlights that were adjustable and could be aimed to point straight down, making them night sky friendly fixtures in the process. But then there was still a lot of growth in the oil and gas industry, and we convinced a number of major operators to, when they built their new facilities, to design night sky friendly lighting into the facilities before they were constructed. We do have a number of facilities out north of the observatory that have low color temperature, warm white, 2,700 degree Kelvin, full cutoff fixtures that are good for the night sky, and just as important, good visibility for their safety and their workers at night.
So Bill, what conversations did you have that worked? What tones or methods? Because I'm sure you had all sorts of different conversations.
Sure.
What brought success with corporate entities?
Yeah, well, I mean, the first time I ever stepped foot on an oil rig, I was told that you can't have too much light on an oil rig. And I said, well, what if that light is shining right into your eyes? And the most important thing to do in terms of approaching people is to show them examples of good lighting. If you're talking to a community, identify well-lit, night sky friendly lit facilities in that community, whether it's a house or a business, a residence or a business. Show people what the kind of lighting you're trying to promote actually looks like so they can see it with their own eyes. That's the most important thing. When people see it, they can't unsee it. It simply makes sense. Get the glare out of your eyes. You can see what's under the light, and it's cheaper to operate as well. So there are a lot of good arguments, but I think there's nothing quite like a good demonstration project. We would go to oil and gas companies and say, just one facility, let's aim the lights down and see what you think. If you don't like it, put it back the way it was. So it's non-threatening as possible. But even just one corner of your facility or one fixture at your facility, just adjust it to where it's aiming down, fully shielded. And once they see it, it's like, oh, now I get it.
It's counterintuitive.
It is counterintuitive. People think the brighter, the better. And it's simply not the case for nighttime visibility.
So you've retired now,
Yeah.
3 years ago,
Yeah.
and you've lived for 32 years in a place that people would love to move and live forever. And you left there,
Yes.
and what drove that decision to not find a house outside of Fort Davis or near the
Oh,
Prude
yeah.
Ranch or something like?
Well,
You could have done that, but you chose not to. What was that?
Well, first off, when I retired, university housing that I had been in for decades, also retired. Yeah, so I no longer qualified for housing on campus at McDonald Observatory. But the reason that my wife and I chose Kansas City, well, she wasn't attached to any particular place. She'd been all around, and I was born in Kansas City, left here when I was 15 and only returned to visit briefly on occasion for 50+ years. And I missed seasonal weather. We lived at 6,800 feet in the high desert of West Texas and very little water. It's brown 10 months out of the year, except during the monsoon when the thing.
Which is right now,
green up.
basically.
Yeah, the monsoon is hopefully getting started there. We're headed that way next week, hoping to see some green countryside. It's beautiful when it's green, but it gets boring when it's dry and brown all the time. But at any rate, Kansas City was my hometown, and seasonal weather and trees and water and good medicine. We were driving 8 hours to get to Austin for medical care. So it was just time to locate where there's more.
You're in the central United States.
Yeah,
Everything's halfway. If you want to go to the coast, it's halfway to the coast.
yeah.
You've got a great airport. Kansas City has a
Yep.
great airport
Yep.
system. The roads here are fantastic. I sound like a salesman for Kansas City,
You are
but it's a well-planned city.
signing up for the Chamber
It's
of
got,
Commerce.
it's got wide boulevards
Yeah.
with grass and trees in the median.
Yeah.
It's hilly, it's tree covered, there's plentiful water, it rains.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it gets cold in the winter, but it turns warm.
We
again
like
pretty
the
quick.
seasonal weather.
Right.
That's another thing that drew us here, just to have 4 seasons where before we'd had like 1.5.
So
So
are you an astronomer? Are you an amateur astronomer? Have a telescope, go out and look and
Yep.
go out to McDonald Observatory? and
I'm
look
at PAL every public night that I'm in town.
Well, thank you for that outreach very
Oh, yeah.
much.
I've
It
put
take-
together spectroscopy demonstrations
Right.
on it. It's very popular.
Right, so McDonald Observatory has a new spectroscopy. Say the word
Spectroscopy.
spectroscopist. I can't say it all of a
5
sudden.
times real
I'm
fast.
getting a blank. Exhibit that got built after a grant.
Yeah.
And you know, spectroscopy,
It's okay.
that word, I can't say it all of a sudden because I'm
Spectroscopy.
giggling. Spectroscopy. There we go.
Got it.
It is an important part of astronomy.
Oh, it's 80 to 90% of the science. Yeah.
A lot of science in it, but most amateurs don't do it. There's a segment that does it,
Mhm.
just like there's a segment that does everything in astronomy. Variable star observers, that people like to split double stars. You know, there's people who focus only on nebula. And that's what's cool about the hobby. We're all under one big tent, and we might have a little umbrella that we're sort of particular to, but
Mhm.
we're all in this together about looking up at the night sky.
Yeah, yeah. The fellow that founded the Grand Canyon Star Party, a guy named Dean Kettleston, unfortunately not with us anymore, but he commented to me one day that he says, you know, the group in Tucson, the astronomy club in Tucson is really huge. I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of members, and there's a small segment of them that are just crazy enough that they like to do public outreach and education. And yeah, you'll find that at any
Right.
astronomy club, but some people want to be left alone with their telescope. Don't bother me. Others want to take pretty pictures. Others want to do spectroscopy, and there are just enough people, thankfully, that want to do education and outreach and teach other people about the astronomy and the wonders of the universe. So I fall into that category. I've done a lot of the other stuff as well, but that's what I really get my jollies from.
I love outreach. I love having somebody look through telescope and see the rings of Jupiter for the first time and have a emotional, religious, physical reaction to it.
Yeah.
Start crying,
Yeah.
you know, when they
Start
see-
laughing.
start laughing.
Yeah.
You know, but they see, and it's generally the moon at high power and Saturn seeing the rings. Jupiter, the moon's at Jupiter, and Jupiter doesn't really do it. But for me, my experience is Saturn and the moon, seeing craters has a very physical impact on many
Indeed.
people.
And you don't have to have a dark sky to see those.
Correct.
things either. You can
Correct.
be in the middle, you can have your telescope set up on a street corner outside a theater in downtown Kansas City. When
Yeah.
the show lets out, show people the rings of Saturn from downtown.
Yeah,
They can see it.
sidewalk guerrilla astronomy.
Yeah.
And if you get one person who thinks about it that night, the
Mhm.
next day,
Yep,
it's success.
exactly.
And even if nobody thinks about the next day, you still had 300, 400, 500 people maybe look through your telescope.
You know, that's the thing about astronomy and astronomy education, especially with kids, with school groups and what have you, that we focus very heavily on. We did at McDonald, and I do still today, trying to get the Astronomical Society of Kansas City more involved with students and teachers and parents. The thing about astronomy is that most kids find it intuitively interesting, exciting, even, outer space. And some teachers their initial response is, well, yeah, but astronomy is not practical. They'll never really make a career or a living out of it. We're trying to teach them skills they can use. Well, I know dozens of people who had an early interest in astronomy who went on to mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, software engineering, computers, science, you name it, cryogenics. There's so many. If you visit a major observatory, you will look around and see technologies of every flavor.
Absolutely.
So an early interest in astronomy may well not lead to another astronomer per se, a professional astronomer, but it may well lead to the next engineer of note. So
I say, getting to Mars is rocket science.
yeah,
It's
right.
it's very difficult to get to Mars, and it's really serious rocket science.
Yep.
But once you get to Mars and get the rovers, who are doing the heavy lifting? Geologists, chemists,
Yeah.
meteorologists, all the justs,
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
just fields, just like here on Earth. Those people are working on Mars remote sensing. I have a friend who worked for the railroads for many years, Bruce Muse, who got laid off, and he, out of a whim, he applied for a job at the Very Large Array telescope system, and he's now works on all the servo motors and moves them around, and so he's been an amateur astronomer, but he's now working at an astronomy tourist attraction, if you will, and gets to work on those things every day. And I was in the newspaper business my whole life, and did heavy steel fabrication for a year after being the editor and publisher of 9 weekly newspapers. That's a very severe career change.
Yeah.
Right. That's not a 180. That's more like a 720, And then Scott knew me from doing outreach and had a customer service job come open. And now I'm working in astronomy full time. So you don't want to write off and say it's a dead end job. There's all sorts of jobs associated with astronomy that you don't have to necessarily have the higher astrophysical math,
Right.
And that's what's cool.
Yeah.
So-
Well, and I'm it's great that the whole idea of you have one life, you only have one career kind of went out, I guess in the 60s or something. I've had, I guess I'm on my third or fourth career, so the important thing is to find what it is that makes you happy and see if there's not a way to make a living at it.
People who have jobs and they're miserable.
Yeah.
I know people who have jobs and they're miserable. And I think go find something that's not miserable and do it. And there's they can't get out of that envelope. There's stable. It is scary to be, for me, 54 and it literally have grown up in the newspaper industry. And who would have known that my father giving me the love of astronomy, visual, he didn't buy a telescope till he was 65 years old. But binoculars and visual and taking pictures turned into a job for me, as a second career. And I like to say, I have a jobby, I have a hobby that's a job, and it's cool. I'm a blessed person for that.
Agreed.
So anyway, we're going to wrap this up. Scott, do we have any questions that have come in at all or any comments?
Well, let's see. We've got somebody wants to talk about the oscillating universe, but that's a little off topic here.
Yep.
But anyways, we know there's people out there watching, and they'll watch the replay of this stream as well. So we want to thank you for tuning in, and also Bill, we want to thank you. I'm sorry I misspoke on you being director, but I would have made you director. Okay. So,
Okay. It's, we can hear, it's a lot quieter, so we can hear a little bit better now. I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
So anyhow, but thank you very much, and stay tuned for more 2024 ALCon.
Thank you, Scott. Bill,
Take care.
thank you very
Very
much.
much.
Appreciate
Pleasure.
you. Appreciate it. Wonderful talking to you.
Thank you.